Hi there. So sugar is undoubtedly one of the most debated food components that poses a very high risk to our bodies, and there is enough research that actually documents its effects on our health and well-being, which includes, and it's not limited to, obesity, type 2 diabetes, heart diseases, cancer, tooth decay, and so on. So it is quite concerning to realize just how much our modern diet practices have us consuming so much sugar with or without our conscious knowledge. So we all know how much it is difficult to curb the sugar cravings as it is, and so this is the video that will help you into some practical steps to start reducing the very sugar cravings that you have. So please watch until the very end. So in the first place, sugar can either be naturally occurring, and this is in the foods like fruits and vegetables, which has very little effect on your blood sugar, or free sugar that is mostly found in processed foods and can be connotated in more than 56 terms on your food labels, which is where the risk actually comes from. All right, now it is estimated that an average modern adult could possibly be consuming up to 17 to 20 teaspoons of added sugar per day. So this is dependent on the type of food and drinks, of course, that person is consuming. So it is worth noting that the World Health Organization strongly recommends anything between 5 to 10 teaspoons of free sugar in a day as per January 2020 guidelines. So the free sugar includes glucose, dextrose, fructose, sucrose, as well as things like maltose, and also sugars that are found in honey, syrups, fruit juices, fruit juice concentrates, and so on. So free sugars are either added to the food by the consumer, which is you, for instance when you add sugar in coffee or tea, honey in muesli, but they are also found in many processed foods such as ready meals, soft drinks, cookies, and of course in things like cakes, biscuits, and so on. So before we go on, I would like to tackle the constant question as to whether there is a better sugar. So better sugars could include things like maple syrup, coconut sugar, date syrup that score low on the glycemic index, and they also have very low amounts of fructose. So sucrose, which is what cane sugar is, and glucose are what causes insulin levels to spike. So whereas fructose does not. Now fructose is what is found in fruit for the most of the part. However, too much fructose can actually be challenging for the liver to metabolize, and this is very debatable. However, the recommended quantity of fructose per day should not possibly exceed something like 50 grams. So over this quantity, the metabolism of fructose in the liver starts to produce free radicals. In essence, what you're actually looking for in a better sugar is both a low glycemic index, a fructose content that is not too high, and any other additional nutrients that cane sugar does not offer. So for instance, the other better sugars could include date syrup, which is not actually sugar, it's actually a food made from a fruit. Date syrup is actually low on the glycemic index, and another better sugar would be raw honey, especially raw local honey, which is also a real food. Please underline the word raw here, since it's quite difficult to find this type of honey, and it's really not what you will find in your grocery store or your supermarket. Maple syrup sourced straight from trees, coconut sugar which comes from blossoms of the coconut tree, blackstrap molasses which are rich in iron, potassium, and calcium could be other alternatives. So some other additives that you could definitely avoid would be agave syrup, which is high in fructose, as well as the corn syrup that is also very high in fructose. So now you may ask, how do you cut back on these free sugars to avoid the several risks that come about from consuming them? Here are some practices that you can actually begin today. So the first thing is to cut back on the sugar-filled drinks. So this would include things like sodas, the energy drinks, the sports drinks, and even fruits turned into juice. So actually the so-called smoothies and fruit juices indeed have loads of sugar in them, and this is the major reason as to why we actually recommend eating your fruits as opposed to actually drinking them. All right, so an example would be, for instance, an apple juice that has about 12 teaspoons of sugar for a 450 milliliter pack. So you can replace this with water, infused water, unsweetened teas, coffee, tea, and so on. So solid studies show a significant change in weight when you actually cut out sugary drinks. Number 2 would be choose whole foods, unrefined or unprocessed food components, which are in most cases free of added sugar and any other additives in this case to preserve them. So other additives would be substances like emulsifiers, artificial flavors, and so on. So buying whole foods and cooking them instead of trusting someone else, in this case restaurants, to cook them for you, ensures that you also cut back on the added sugars. All right. Number 3 would be to read your labels and check for all the sugar in all the food you buy from the aisles especially. So manufacturers always add sugar when a food item is labeled as fat-free or low-fat or even sugar-free. So there is always a catch in processed food to improve the taste and the market of that said product. So food companies may use more than 50 other names for the sugar, which is very difficult to spot. So it is for this reason that I actually recommend buying more food from the peripheries of the supermarket as opposed to the aisles of the supermarket. Number 4 would be to eat more protein and fat. In this case, you can go plant-based if you may, or consume lean cuts of meat as well as the less saturated fat components. So the thing with food that is high in added sugar is that it may also contain high amounts of saturated fat as well as sodium. So this is due to the hyperpalatability effect that manufacturers always tend to capitalize on. So hyperpalatability is simply how the food product ends up tasting. So it's the same way when you feel consuming like something like French fries alone, it could taste a little bland, but throw in something like a piece of chicken or a piece of meat right there, then that food becomes one meal that you just don't want to give up on. So sugary foods are created in such a way that they blend in with high doses of fat and sugar, for instance things like donuts, for them to taste good. So this causes an addiction. And however, a diet high in protein and low in sugar has the opposite effect of sugar cravings. So if you feel fuller, you're less likely to crave the quick hunger fix that sugar presents to you. So the number 5 thing that you can also do is not to fall into prey of the less processed sweeteners. So sugar has been documented to be very addictive to the extent of drug addiction. So think in the lines of cocaine addiction, although this is quite a very debatable subject. So it is possible to go into withdrawal when you actually reduce your sugar intake. So studies have even shown that rats experienced signs of anxiety and depression after a high sugar diet was stopped. So you could debatably go for such alternatives like stevia, xylitol, erythritol, and so on. However, still ensuring that you're within this limits of 5 to 10 teaspoons of free sugars per day. The number 6 thing that you could do is to, of course, stop keeping sugar in the house. There's always a willpower to stop yourself to go out into your fridge or pantry for a sugar fix. So studies show that your circadian rhythm or your sleep cycle increases the hunger or cravings for sugar or starch in the evenings. So if you have snacks that are high in added sugar in the house, This may trap you from achieving your goal to kill the cravings. All right, so remember, something as little as a single tablespoon or serving of ketchup may actually have already 1 teaspoon of sugar. So in the long run, sugar remains a culprit to our health, and we need to get rid of the sugar that we are consuming. You will definitely hear more about sugar in the news, and there's no doubt about this fact that we need to actually cut down the sugar to eliminate the risk of heart diseases, obesity, cancer, acne, and other chronic illnesses. So there you have it. Please subscribe and comment down below. Tell me, how much sugar do you actually consume in a day? Do you even know how much sugar you consume? Share this video, and until next time, remember that you are what you eat. So please keep doing it right. Bye.